Hello everyone, and welcome back to Revit Snippets. Great tips you can learn in just a few minutes.
This video is sponsored by Tagitize, the easiest way to run Tag All on multiple Revit views and sheets. Also, say goodbye to overlapping tags. Tagitize will turn this into this. Try Tagitize completely for free using the link in this video's description. If your Revit takes forever to start, but once it's open, everything runs fine, you're not alone. This is one of the most common Revit complaints I see, even on powerful machines. The good news is that slow startup usually has nothing to do with your model or your hardware. In this video, I'll show you 3 quick tricks that fix slow Revit startup in most cases. Method 1. Turn off redundant or badly written Revit add-ins. If Revit feels slow before the interface even appears, add-ins are almost always the culprit. Revit loads every enabled add-in during startup, even if you never use it. Some bad add-ins even perform license checks or network calls during Revit startup, which can add several seconds each. The more add-ins you have, the longer Revit waits before it finishes loading. If you're on Revit 2025.3 or newer, Autodesk finally made this much easier. There is now a built-in add-in manager that lets you disable add-ins without touching folders. You can select an add-in, disable it, and restart Revit to immediately test the difference. This is much cleaner than renaming folders and guessing what loads from where. One really useful feature here is that the add-in manager shows how long each add-in takes to load. This lets you identify the worst offenders instead of disabling everything blindly. If one add-in takes 5 or 10 seconds to load, you've probably found your problem. Start by disabling that add-in and see how much faster Revit starts. If you're on Revit 2025.2 or earlier, add-in troubleshooting is more manual. Revit loads add-ins from multiple locations, and each location has subfolders for each Revit version. That's why the usual advice of renaming add-in folders can get messy very quickly. It's easy to lose track of what you disable and where it was loaded from. A much cleaner approach is to use Stantec's Add-in Manager. This is a free, open-source tool that lets you enable and disable Revit add-ins without digging through folders. It works as a standalone application, so you don't even need to open Revit to manage your add-ins. You just restart Revit after making changes. To install the tool, search for Stantec's Add-in Manager download. Click the first link to open the repository. Click the Download Repository link to get the zip file. Next, extract the contents of the zip file to any location on your computer. Then, run the application. Open the unzipped folder, go into Add-in Manager, bin, debug, and double-click addin.manager.exe to launch it. You'll see a clear list of all detected add-ins, with buttons to disable individual ones or disable everything at once. This makes it very easy to test startup performance and identify which add-in is slowing things down. Disable one, restart Revit, and immediately see the difference. One important thing to note is permissions. Some add-ins live in protected system folders, so the add-in manager may need to be run as administrator. If you don't, it may not be able to rename or disable those add-ins properly. Running it as admin avoids silent failures and makes sure changes actually apply. The big advantage here is control and clarity. You're not manually renaming folders, guessing which add-in belongs to which version of Revit. For older Revit versions, this is one of the best tools you can have. Before checking method 2, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Tagitize. With Tagitize, it's never been easier to tag multiple Revit categories at once using your favorite tagging styles. Say goodbye to spending countless hours untangling Revit tags. After running Tagitize on this view, for example, all my tags are perfectly readable. None of them overlaps with their hosts or other elements in the view. If I think this tag, for example, can be placed better, I can just select it and click Next to tell Tagitize to try the next possible tag position. Each time I click the button, Tagitize moves the tag for me, and I can keep doing this until it gets to a tag position I like. There we go. That's much better. Try Tagitize completely for free today using the link in this video's description. Another surprisingly common cause of slow Revit startup is the recent files list. When Revit launches, it tries to validate every file shown on the home screen. If some of those files live on unavailable servers, old project folders, or disconnected drives, Revit can pause while trying to reach them. This is especially common if you move between Office, Home, and VPN setups. To fix this, we're going to clear the recent files list manually. First, close Revit completely. Then, navigate to your Revit user settings folder in App Data for your Revit version. Inside that folder, locate the file called revit.ini. Open Revit.ini using a text editor like Notepad. Scroll down until you find a section called Recent File List. This section contains paths to every file shown on your Revit home screen. If any of those paths are no longer accessible, they can slow down startup. You can safely delete all the entries under Recent File List, but leave the header itself in place. Save the file and close the editor. The next time you start Revit, the recent files list will be empty, and Revit won't waste time checking unreachable locations. If method 2 helps, but the slowdown keeps coming back, this is the long-term fix. What's happening is that Revit keeps rebuilding the recent files list over time. As you open more projects from network locations, VPNs, or temporary folders, the list grows again. Eventually, startup slows down for the same reason as before. Instead of constantly clearing the list, you can prevent Revit from building it at all. Go to File, then Options, and open the User Interface tab. Near the bottom, you'll see an option called Enable Recent Files page at Startup. Simply untick this checkbox and click OK. From now on, Revit will no longer load the Recent Files page when it starts. That means it won't try to validate old or unreachable file paths during startup. You lose the convenience of the recent file list, but you gain consistent startup speed. For many users, that trade-off is well worth it. Even if you've done all that, Revit may still check some other file paths during startup. If any of those paths point to a slow or unavailable network location, Revit will wait. To see which file paths cause this behavior, go to File, then Options, and open File Locations. Look closely at template paths, default project locations, and family template folders. If any of these point to a network drive, Revit will try to access it every time it starts. If that drive is slow or disconnected, startup time increases dramatically. Offline map drives are a very common issue here. If Windows still has a map drive letter, but the server isn't available, Revit will try and fail repeatedly. This is especially common on laptops that move between office and home. Removing or replacing those paths with local folders can make startup much faster. The last method is especially relevant to people working from home. Before Revit fully opens, it checks your license status. If that license check depends on a network connection, startup can slow down. This is especially noticeable with network licenses or shared license servers. Any delay here blocks the entire startup process. If your VPN is connected, Revit may try to reach a license server through a slow or restricted route. Sometimes it's not failing, it's just timing out slowly. As a quick test, try starting Revit with the VPN disconnected. If startup is suddenly much faster, licensing is likely the issue. In most cases, slow Revit startup comes down to add-ins, network paths, or licensing delays. The key is testing one change at a time so you know exactly what fixed it. You usually don't need to reinstall Revit or upgrade your hardware. Before you go, check out our sponsor, Taggetize. Save all your tagging styles in one place and tag one or several views or sheets at once. Also, say goodbye to overlapping tags. Simply review generated tags and make any final tweaks with the handy tag audit commands. Try Taggetize completely for free using the link in this video's description.
If you like this lesson and want more like this every single week, make sure to subscribe to this channel now. For now, have a good day and I'll see you in the next tutorial.